Hi everyone, my name is That Professor Guy, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a basic lesson plan for noobs, frazzled teachers, and everyone in between. I am a university professor here in South Korea, and I started this channel just to share some of my experiences, hopefully some tips and some knowledge that will help those of you who are mentioned are a little frazzled, busy, and anyone else who might be interested in becoming a teacher and what the day-to-day looks like. So anyway, here we go. Today's agenda, we're going to talk about a couple different components of a very basic lesson plan. I've used this pattern since I started teaching. I've used variations of this pattern, and I think you might find it useful, especially for your own teaching career and teaching experiences, jobs. All right, so we have the warm-up. We have schema activation, or activating prior knowledge. Short lecture. Supplemental media. Praxis, or practicing the stuff you learn. And finally, review. Let's dive into these. Let's dive into this material. So, the warm-up. Oh, and by the way, this lesson plan is useful for classes that are maybe an hour long or so. You can extend them. You can add other elements to it, and make it. You could stretch it out over a longer class period, or you can cut different elements out and just shorten it down to a 30 or 40-minute class as well. But I built this lesson plan around the 1 hour class. Okay, so that's kind of the dealio. All right, here we go. The warm up, generally 5 to 7 minutes long. Doesn't have to be exactly in this specific time frame. Basically, the purpose of the warm up is so that you can kind of create a positive atmosphere for your students. You can create a more friendly atmosphere for your students by having some very effective warm-up activities. And my favorite warm-up activity is using the discussion question activity. So what I do is I'll put 2 or 3 questions on the board, and then I'll have the students discuss in pairs or in groups. They don't have to write anything down. They're just looking at the board, boom, asking that question to their partner or in their group, and then they're getting responses, and so they're just kind of discussing these questions with each other. And and then at the end of that, what I'll do is I will call on random students to offer their responses. I'll say, hey, hey Ji-hoon, why don't you choose a question from the list? So they'll say, okay, I choose question 2. All right, go ahead and share your answer with the class. So we'll do something like that at the end of this activity. Let me just give you a sample of some questions I used quite recently in one of my classes. Question number 1, what did you do this weekend? So something related to the past. What's your MBTI? Something related to your present. And the MBTI personality test is quite a trendy and popular thing to do in South Korea. So I thought it would be fun to bring something relevant to the students. And number 3, if you could have lunch with a famous person, who would it be and why? Touching on the future element. So I like to do a bit of a past, present, future thing with my discussion questions. And I find that the more random and weird and awkward the questions are, the more interesting the responses will be. And sometimes, or hopefully usually, the students have more fun with these questions. Again, I have this activity, this warm-up session, so that students can lower their guard, so that they can feel a bit more relaxed. I really like to create a low-key environment for my students, a very positive environment for my students, so that they're ready to engage with the rest of the lesson and the material. So the warm-up is absolutely essential, I think, for any lesson you do, whether it's a 2-hour class or a really short 30-minute class. I think having some sort of warm-up activity is super important for that affective benefit. All right, going on to the second element of our basic lesson plan, we have activating prior knowledge. So depending on what you're teaching that day, it's very likely that students have some pre-knowledge or prior knowledge of that topic. It's not always the case, but usually students have some idea or some previous experience or knowledge. So what this activity does, or what this block of time is meant for, is to activate that prior knowledge that they might have about a specific topic. And we do this to prepare them for the lecture, the upcoming lecture, or the material that's coming up in a couple minutes. And in the field of education or second language acquisition or whatever educational field you're in, technically, the technical term for this, I believe, is called schema activation, or schemata, the plural form, schemata activation. Super important as well. I would say this is also an essential element to any lesson that you're going to teach. So you want to activate knowledge that they had in the past related to the material that you're going to teach today. One of the ways I like to do this is by doing the think, pair, share, very similar to the warm-up activity I mentioned earlier. Think, pair, share. Basically, you put students in groups, and then you have them answer questions. You have them answer questions that you prepare ahead of time. So here are some examples of questions that I'll put up on the board. Number one, the lesson for this, so the sample lesson just for this PPT, just for this video, is this. Ethical issues related to AI cars on the road. Okay, I'll say that one more time. Ethical issues related to AI cars or automated vehicles on the road. What are some ethical issues that come up when you have these vehicles on the road? I don't know if we're quite there yet. But I think we're getting there. I think we're on that path. Anyway, so the topic is AI, AI cars. So the schema activity, the schema questions, or the think, pair, share questions I'll put up on the board are as follows. What's the first thing you think about when you hear the word AI? How is AI being used today? What are some positive and negative things we may encounter in the future with regard to AI? So these are some questions that I think can help activate or help bring up any thoughts or any previous experiences students may have with artificial intelligence, whether it be Siri or Bixby or Alexa or whatever whatever types of Siri's just activated, whatever types of AI students have experience with right now, or it could even be like, maybe some students own a Tesla or have been in a Tesla before. They could talk about that. So again, we're doing this to activate prior knowledge. Now, another thing you can do in order to and by the way, sorry, with think, pair, and share, the thinking part, you can have the students prepare their responses to these questions by themselves beforehand, and then you can put them into pairs and groups to talk with each other. And then the third component of this is share, which is having maybe a representative from each group come up to the front and share their answers, or they can just stand where they are and share a summary of what their group talked about. The teacher can also say, hey, okay, so group one, can you share your responses for question two? And so the speaker, or everyone in that group, or just a representative of that group, can stand up and share some of the things they talked about with regard to question two. So there's the thinking part, which is they spend some time thinking about the questions. Pair or group, which is they share with each other within the group, and then share, which is sharing with the larger group. Another activity I like to do is, or another important schema activation activity would be any kind of vocabulary activity. A lot of times in the lessons that we teach, there are important words that students may not be familiar with, or maybe they need a bit of review. So having some sort of vocab activity is going to really help prepare them for the lesson that's going to come. So very simple. You can you can make worksheets. I know that's a little boring. That's a little, I don't know. It's a little old school, but worksheets work depending on how you make them. There are worksheet creators online. I generally make my own worksheets if I do use them, because sometimes I find that worksheets that are already in a book or online or whatever. They have words that maybe I don't need, and they don't have words that I do need to include. So I'll just make my own worksheets. Word search. Word search activities are really fun because they're just really simple to do, and then after everyone's done with them, you can go through the definitions together as a class, or literally you can go to Oxford Learners Dictionary or Longman Dictionary, and you can just go through the words together with your class, and they can take notes. They can do Cornell notes, outline, or whatever. But you can go through the words one by one with the students, just online, or just have them on a Word document up on the screen, and they can follow along. I do really like the Oxford and Longman dictionaries because they're very second language learner friendly, and anyone learning English, or anyone whose first language is not English, these are two great dictionaries for them. So I always recommend these to my students. Anyways, the Think, Pair, Share activity and the vocab activity, these are two great ways to activate prior knowledge that our students may have. Moving on to the lecture section. So we've done the warm-up, we've done the schema activation, activating prior knowledge. So now the students are ready, and this is where we offer our short lecture. And I say short because, I guess it really depends on what you teach, okay? But I find that students, even remembering, my own days in college, our attention spans are not really long these days. They're kind of short. So I like to keep my heavy lecture stuff condensed and in the 10 to 15 minute time frame. So this is the main course of your lecture. This is, if your lecture is a hamburger, this is the main meat. Okay, this is the stuff inside in the middle. And what I like to do is before hashing out the details of my lecture, I'll write down the takeaways, the salient points, the key ideas of my lecture, and then build the details around those salient points. I find that helps me when I'm teaching, when I'm up on, I don't want to say stage, but when I'm up there at the front of the class teaching, I find that if I have these takeaways written down first, they tend to stick in my brain better, so that I can teach these without looking at my notes too much. Also, by having takeaways, I think it makes it a lot easier for the students to absorb and to remember as well. So I like to have a couple key points that students can take away. If you need to, with examples, you can go in depth. Obviously, I think any lecture can't just your lecture can't just be a bunch of big ideas. You do have to sometimes offer examples. Sometimes you do have to go in detail. So yeah, if you need to. Another thing I try to do is I try to connect today's lesson with the larger goals of the semester. So if the goal of the semester is to develop academic writing skills, then I'll try to connect this lesson, today's lesson, to that larger academic goal. I really try to bring in the big picture from time to time, actually almost weekly, so that students feel a sense of connection between what they're learning right now to the larger goal, to the larger academic goals, semester goals. Now, the main way I think a lot of us teachers share the lecture is through some sort of PPT or presentation document, whether it could be PPT, Microsoft PowerPoint, it could be Prezi, it could be Google Slides, it could be, there are some other options out there, but I think Microsoft PPT is generally available to all of us who are in the education field. So just make a PPT, and a couple very simple principles I try to keep in mind, or I try to follow. I try to create very simple PPTs, visually appealing PPTs with cool GIFs, retro GIFs. I try to make my PPTs very simple, very clear, and very direct, so that the students can focus on the main things, the main ideas, and not be distracted by other things that don't need to be there. I know that I'm sort of breaking my own rules with this PPT right here. I think there are some content words that maybe I can delete just from this text here, but just I'm human. Okay. Anyway, with the PPT, you want to try to keep it simple, clear, and direct, and visually appealing to capture the attention of the audience, whose attention span may be quite short, like mine. So that's your lecture. Now, a lot of times I find that my lecture is not, maybe it's not enough, or it's not impacting everyone who may have, it may not be impacting everyone. So in that case, in that situation, what I do is I bring in some supplemental media. This could be between 5 to 10 minutes. Supplemental media, the purpose is, just reading from the text here, sometimes it's important, sometimes it's helpful to bring different perspectives to supplement the main lecture, not to supplant the main lecture, but to supplement it. I think sometimes having a funny video clip from a TV show or a very cool YouTube video or something can help clarify the points that you want to share, that you wanted to share in your main lecture, or to elucidate your lecture ideas, as I put here. So yeah, you can show clips from funny dramas or TV shows. I find that this is a great way to kind of bring everyone back if they're kind of drifting off. And also, if you happen to share a clip from a trending TV show, I mean, obviously you got to respect copyright, so follow whatever laws you have in your country. But sharing these relevant and trendy clips can really hook them in and bring them back. Also, you can look for YouTube videos, or I find that TED Ed videos are very, very useful too. So, yeah, I mean, some instructors even use songs, or like some kind of music video or something like that. You can kind of go nuts with this. So the point of this section is that you're bringing in alternative media, different type of media, to kind of bring your lecture to life, or not to bring your lecture to life, to bring some of the points in your lecture to life, or to offer a different perspective of some of your ideas in your main lecture. Now, after having gone through the lecture, after getting some clarification through the supplemental media or the alternative media, I think it's very important that we offer our students a chance to practice some of the things that they learned. Obviously, this is not always, obviously you can't always do this, for certain classes. For example, if you're teaching chemistry, they might need to, take a separate lab course or something like that. If you're teaching physics, this might be possible, but it might also not be possible. So in our case, with the AI card dilemma, or the ethical issues related to AI cars, that sample lesson that I mentioned earlier, there are some things that you could do in this situation, but as I just mentioned, sometimes this is not always possible. Anyway, with this section, the Praxis, what I like to call Praxis, or the practice section, you want to give your students a chance to apply what they just learned, and to have a visceral experience with that material, or with the ideas in your lecture. One way you can do this is through skits. So for us, if I'm trying to raise awareness of ethical issues related to AI cars on the road, one thing I can do is I can have some students volunteer to put on a little skit. So maybe one student can be the owner of the AI car, and then some student, maybe 4 or 5 students, can be pedestrians on the road crossing. And then we can simulate a skit where the AI car malfunctions, and it has to either go straight and hit all those pedestrians and kill them, or the AI car in that split second only sees a second option of veering right and hitting a fire hydrant and killing the owner of the vehicle. So that kind of ethical dilemma. Students can put on a skit and kind of demonstrate that to the class. Another thing you can have students do is to reteach the lesson to their peers. So students can maybe give them a couple minutes to formulate their own notes, maybe some of the key ideas, and give them a chance to create some examples or other metaphors or illustrations, and then have them teach that to their own group. So have the students out in split up into different groups as well. So have them reteach some of the main ideas. That gives them a chance to really absorb that information in a deeper way. And I think one of the best ways you can learn anything is by learning it enough so that you can teach it to somebody else. So have students reteach their ideas, the lesson ideas. Another thing you can have students do, which is a bit more of an individual activity, is have students write a very simple paragraph highlighting some of the main ideas that they learned, or highlighting, for our example in the video, highlighting some of the main ethical issues that may express themselves or present themselves in an AI car dilemma situation. So offering the students a chance to practice, I would say this is also quite essential in your lesson planning. And the last part of any basic lesson plan is the review section. I think it's really important that we repeat our ideas, and if they're simple enough to be repeated, if they're simplified, if they're big ideas, kind of like takeaways or salient points, if they're in that format, I think it's a lot easier to repeat these ideas throughout the lesson, so that there's better memory retention. So at the end of the lesson, what I'll do is I'll just have a final PPT slide with all the main points just in summary format, and just go boom, boom, boom. And I'll just go through them and make sure that the students are clear on these ideas. And I'll also offer a chance for students to ask questions if they have any questions, like an AMA session or an Ask Me Anything session, Q&A session. And I think review is super important to make sure that our students remember the material that we teach that day. So warm up, schema activation or activating prior knowledge, that the short lecture, supplemental media, alternative media, practicing or praxis, and finally review. I think these are 6 really important elements of any basic lesson plan that you're going to write and implement in your classrooms. Okay, my first video is done. I would really appreciate it if you subscribe to this channel. I'm going to make an effort to make better videos and to offer what I can from my 10 plus years of teaching experience. And I hope that you also enjoyed this video and that you learned something, or at least if something helped you, then that would be great. So anyway, click like, click subscribe if you would like to. Offer any comments if you have about my really amazing crappy video production skills, and any other comments and feedback that you might have, or any questions about teaching, you can leave them in the comments below. Have a wonderful day. Be well, be healthy, be happy. Peace.